Everyone, welcome to the show. Tonight's conversation takes place at a fascinating moment for the film industry. Awards season is once again forcing us to ask not just which films are being celebrated, but what those choices say about power, risk, and representation in cinema today. We're seeing record-breaking nominations, genre-bending films gaining prestige, and at the same time a persistent imbalance behind the camera, especially when it comes to who gets to direct the biggest, most visible projects. To discuss, I am joined by Ola Salva, film critic. Hello and welcome, delighted to have you with us.
Hi Sally, thank you so much for having me.
So let's start with Oscar nominations. Sinners broke a record with 16 nominations. So what does the Academy embrace of a musical horror tells us about the industry, about the way it's evolving?
Actually, it's more an information of what kind of changes took place in the Academy itself, because as we know, for the past few years, the Academy invited a lot of new members to make sure that other voices are included. They also invited a lot of so-called international voters, meaning filmmakers who work outside of the US. And I think this is one of the ways it's manifesting itself, that type of cinema, which is not, I would say, very conventional, that it's an elevated genre, that it's at the same time very smart, very well directed, is number one.
So what about Polish accents when it comes to awards?
We have two Polish filmmakers nominated. One of them is Małgorzata Turzańska, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, a costume designer who has been working with American filmmakers and not only them for many years. Here she was working on Chloe Zhao's Hamnet, and actually her work is very, very impressive. Recently she was touring Poland to introduce the film, to discuss her work, which actually gives a lot of visibility to costume designer work, because we always, or usually we are focused on, best film, best director, best writer, and of course the actors, because they bring a lot of publicity, a lot of glamour. But there are so many people working on film. For example, what you asked me about the changes in the industry or the Oscars. This is the first year where we have a new category introduced. It's the first time since I think 90s. It's the best casting. So this is an important change.
And speaking of casting, one battle after another film with multiple nominations, 13 I believe, featuring Leonardo DiCaprio in one of the lead roles. Leonardo DiCaprio yet again. And so my question is, why do we see same faces over and over again? Are we lacking new talent?
This is a great question, and I think there are many reasons behind that. First of all, actually, it's a wonderful film. His performance is also impressive, commendable, whatever adjective you want to put here. Usually there's a tendency to vote for one film in multiple categories. So if P.T.A. Anderson's film gets the best picture, best director, and etc., voters, I mean, I'm a voter for different bodies like European Film Academy, usually focus on the best elements in this film and tend to vote for also actor, actress, and etc. And also it's very difficult to have a breakout performance and to get a lot of publicity, because we are forgetting that it's not just the voting process that counts so much, but also promoting the film, or separately your work, especially when it comes to actors and best documentary, best foreign film, all these categories that tend to have less spotlight, less publicity. It's just very hard work. And Leonardo DiCaprio, being Leonardo DiCaprio, with all respect to his talent and his hard work, it's easier for him to be noticed, to be nominated. And I think a lot of older voters, and I'm not referring to age, but I'm referring to years spent in Academy, is kind of wishing he finally gets the golden man into his hand for this film.
And you mentioned Hamnet as well, 8 nominations for the Oscars, 11 for the BAFTAs, Chloe Zhao's movie. So we have a female director, and I wanted to talk to you about the gender parity when it comes to directing especially. Is there one?
No, and it's one battle after another, if I may bring up the title of one of the nominated films. It's beyond me why we need to work so hard and year after year to have some diversity, equality, inclusion of female voices in cinema. And recently it's been even worse, especially in the United States, where only, I think, 8% of top grossing films were directed by women, including Hamnet and Celine Song's The Materialists. Industry experts that discuss US cinema, Hollywood cinema, say that it's because of the change in the Oval Office, because the president is not exactly supportive of DEI, which is a diversity, equality, and inclusion policy, because, well, you know, he's a businessman as well. So he thinks like every producer should have a right to decide who's he gonna hire, and there will be no policies forcing him to work with the women, with the representative of race minority or other underrepresented minority. And here we have, like I said, a decline in number of films, at least in the US, which is the biggest film market. At the same time, in the periphery, so to speak, when we look from the perspective of Hollywood, we have a slightly different situation in Europe. I think it's above 20% of films directed by women.
I found a study by the European Audiovisual Observatory that said that 27% of directors working on European feature films were women between 2015 and 2024. Still, it's only 27%.
It's only 27, and according to this institution, if we keep changing the ratio of women, we will get 50-50 in 40 years. And let me just look at the other parts of the world. For example, in the Arab world, it's a bit different situation when it comes to Oscars itself. In the best foreign film category, we have a nomination for Kauter Ben Hanea, who's a Tunisian. She directed films The Voice of Hind Rajab, and she is nominated for Oscar for the 3rd time, which makes her the most successful Arab filmmaker, regardless of the genre, till the date.
What about Poland?
What about Poland? Of course, we had Agnieszka Holland, who had her films being nominated in Best International / non-English language film category. Also, she had a nomination for, if I remember correctly, Best Screenplay. However, she has not received an Oscar yet. She should. This year, Polish Oscar hopeful was her film Franz, about Franz Kafka. We have so many talented female directors, female producers like Ewa Puszczyńska, who produced not only Paweł Pawlikowski's Ida and Cold War, but also she was one of the producers working on Jonathan Glazer recent film. So she's really good. She has a lot of recognition. And also Klaudia Śmieja, who collaborated with Brady Corbett on The Brutalist. Eventually, she did not become like official producer of the film due to some production changes, but we have a lot of women. I'm just naming 3. They should be for the Academy consideration.
Mm-hmm. And what metrics should matter most when measuring the progress in film industry? Gender parity, or perhaps hiring practices, or who gets represented on screen, box office sales. What is important?
I would say I will pick answer D, all of the above. As you know, The film industry is not a monolith, so there are very different aspects or elements of a film producing, filmmaking process that are either equally or as important. Obviously, DEI policy that we were discussing earlier is very important. Also, the question of representation, like there is sometimes people think, okay, if a man is directing a film about women, it should not happen. Like, why? They are artists. This is their job to talk about different kind of characters in different settings. The thing is that on screen there are also a lot of underrepresented groups. Here in Oscar, we have more representation when it comes to who gets represented on screen, rather who gets to be represented from behind the screen group.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that there is a generational change when it comes to audiences? Because I've read that according to a recent UCLA study, Gen Z says that there's too much sexual content on screen and they would prefer to see less of that.
Oh, I love Gen Z and how refreshing their perspective feels. Actually, we do have something you mentioned as a generational change. I'm more focused on European cinema, so I see, for example, presence of so-called trigger warning list. If there is a, for example, scene including animal cruelty or sexual violence, the audience will be able to pinpoint that before choosing the film. When it comes to Gen Z's opinion, I understand that because sometimes nudity is included in the film for wrong purposes, for very superficial attraction, and it makes little sense when it comes to either dramaturgy or narrative. And I think it's also connected with so-called male gaze, but this is like a very, very broad subject. But there's a change of generation, let me put it like that, that may have a positive influence on not only American film industry.
Now, on the downside, what about viewers' attention span?
On one hand, we have a generation that grew up with smartphones glued to their hand. This is, of course, a very simplified way of seeing it, but at the same time, the films, if you look at their duration, they tend to be over 2 hours. Most of the nominated films are not 90 minutes. One Battle After Another is almost 3 hours, so it's not exactly matching, but at the same time, when there are retrospectives of classical films that tend to be slower, that tend to be, I would say, more elevated, more in-depth, there are a lot of young people just flocking to watch them, even in Warsaw, where we have regular screenings of films from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and they are not easy watch, let's say, films that you can scroll. The question is, if they are scrolling while watching the film in cinema, is completely different one.
Definitely. And before we go, one last question. If you were to recommend one title to our audiences, which one would that be?
The Voice of Hind Rajab by Kauter Ben Hania, by far the most important film of the year.
Ola Salva, film critic, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching Pulse of Culture. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.